So, hello and welcome to Abnormal Presence Story Talkies. I'm Kamla Iyer. Eid Mubarak to all of you, and I hope you enjoyed our last episode on Pashmina and Kani weaves as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. And this week, we again are in the beautiful valley of Kashmir in our sartorial safar. And like I promised last week, we have to cover this week the beautiful, rich embroidery tapestry of Kashmir, popularly known as Kashmiri Kashida. We have our guest speaker from last week, Preeti Yashwant, with us from Champakali Designs. Hello and welcome, Preeti. It's so nice to see you back again this week.
Thank you so much, Kamla. Thanks for having me again. It's really nice to be back here talking about one of my favorite things, embroidery, especially the Kashmiri embroidery.
Yeah, I know it's absolutely beautiful. And before I start the episode asking you the very obvious question on Kashmiri embroidery, I wanted to just give you a bit of a backstory. So I was fortunate enough to visit Kashmir in 2014, the summer of 2014. Fortunate because I think a few weeks after we left Kashmir was when those floods devastated Srinagar.
Right.
I have a lot of friends and colleagues here who are from Kashmir. So their families back home, it was quite a norm from here when you visit Kashmir to visit their families. And you are obviously familiar with the hospitality in Kashmir, how they kind of treat you when you visit them, the food spread or what you call wazwa, I think.
Wazwan.
Yes, and of course the endless cup of kahwas with saffron and stuff like that. Invite their Khandani artisans home and ask you to look at stuff.
Yes.
So 2014, and I had absolutely no idea about the weaves or embroidery or anything to do with the handlooms, handmade or handicrafts of Kashmir. I just, I was absolutely gobsmacked at what those artisans laid out in front of me. And I just picked up this sari which I'm wearing only because I liked the color. I liked the embroidery, the intricateness of the embroidery. I had no idea what this embroidery
What it is.
was. I had no idea what else is there. He obviously put out everything in front of me, and I picked up two beautiful saris. Much later, I realized both of them are the same embroidery. So, time, and I had all of this in front of me, but I had absolutely no idea I had choices. So today's episode is actually for all those people out there like me who who are probably looking at visual touch feel to pick up saris and not really knowing what goes behind these saris. So my first obvious question to you is, what is the virtual feast in terms of Kashmiri embroidery? Why is it called Kashida, and what all does Kashmir have to offer in the world of Kashida?
Yeah, so like I think it's the same with most of the people, I mean, people don't really know what it is. Like broadly, you might recognize something as a Kashmiri embroidery, but you don't know the details behind it. So Kashmir, I feel, is a veritable cornucopia of India as far as crafts are concerned. Any type of, right from woodworking, namda making, carving, and embroidery is of course a very, very big part of that proverbial horn. So embroidery, Kashmiri embroidery is synonymously known as almost synonymous to the word Kashida, which is kind of, I would say misleading, but there is a bit of confusion on that because Kashida, if you see, is actually a Persian word, which means a flowing cursive handwriting. But maybe, when you're making the motifs, especially in Kashmiri embroidery, they are very flowing motif is there, like calligraphy, almost like calligraphy. So probably from that the word Kashidakari comes, but Kashidakari is also used for all type of embroideries. It is not just Kashmiri. Like in Karnataka, if you go, Kasuti is called as Karnataki Kashida.
Correct.
You must have heard there are songs on that.
Correct.
So Karnataki Kashida is also there, and Kashida is in general embroidery, not specifically Kashmiri. Maybe it started with Kashmir, and that is why Kashida is kind of synonymous with all Kashmiri embroidery. So let's call it Kashmiri Kashida so that there is no confusion. So Kashmiri Kashida, the origin, again, like there is no written documentation on how it started in India, but it is definitely centuries old. For the simple reason, if you go to Ladakh, you see Alchi or Lamayuru. These are monasteries. These are from 11th century, 12th century. You can see paintings in these monasteries where the people are actually wearing clothes which has these embroideries.
Oh.
So it's the very first proof of like these embroideries existed in Kashmir for like literally centuries back. So one connection which is said is seeing the motif, the kind of motif is used is probably it came from Persia. So the Sultan of Persia was actually ruling Kashmir sometime in the 1300s. He was actually the ruler, and he introduced a lot of handicrafts to Kashmir, including paper making, sericulture, and so on. A lot of things. So one guess is probably it was he who introduced these things to Kashmir, the embroideries. He used to get workers from the karigars from Central Asia and get them to India to train the locals.
Okay.
So the embroidery definitely has a very strong Central Asian connect. It's definitely there. Or maybe it came when the Mughals came. Mughals came from Uzbekistan. So the first Mughal Babur when he came. So maybe along with that what is our naan, like the tandoori naan we eat is actually Uzbeki naan. They still eat it. They call it naan. The pulao we eat is their plo. Yeah, so a lot of dishes which we eat are actually coming from Uzbekistan. So maybe when Babur came along with the plo and the naan, he maybe got the embroidery also. So this is actually the first indication that our embroidery, what we call as Ari, it has actually probably come from Uzbekistan. So this is called as a Suzni. This is an Uzbeki Suzni, not to be confused with our Sozni.
Okay.
What we have, our Sozni is different altogether. I'll come to that later. But this is Suzni, and I picked this up from Samarkand in Uzbekistan. So this is from a local artist. So these are definitely an authentic Suzni piece. And our Ari, it's an exact replica of this. It's absolutely same, except for maybe the difference in stitch size. Ours will be a little smaller if it is made on a sari. Like since this is a thicker fabric, it's a slightly bigger stitch.
Yes.
But our Ari is absolutely same as Uzbeki Suzni. So that is probably the genesis of the Kashmiri Ari. Then we have, I'll explain the details of what these are a little later on, but I'll first just outline the different type of embroideries we have in Kashmir. So this is Ari. Then last time, if you remember, I had spoken about Amlikar. I had shown you a shawl which I have, which was started, the Amlikar technique started from the darners. The darners realized that their skills, they have fabulous skills of embroidery, and they decided to explore it. So Amlikar eventually kind of died down, but the darners stitch, the satin stitch which they were using, they kind of worked on that and developed into what we call today as Soz.
As Sozni.
That is that is our Sozni. That is the needlework. That is again very, very fine work. I'll explain the details of that also. Now, somewhere in the 15th century, paper mache craft was introduced in India. So we know paper mache, right? Like I have a few napkin rings here made in the Kashmiri paper mache craft. So this was like, if you see, the flowers and everything will always pop out. I mean, they have a, like, generally the embroideries are very subtle. The colors used in embroideries are very subtle. But this paper mache was just popping out with all those jewel colors and a very 3D effect. So that also again gave an idea to the karigars of maybe, try to incorporate this in a form of embroidery. That led to again, so the basic stitches for paper mache comes from Sozni. It's an offshoot of Sozni, but it is done with slightly different needles, slightly different techniques. So even though the techniques have come from Sozni, but paper mache it can hold on its own. It's a completely different, I won't say completely different, but it's a separate form of embroidery. You cannot lump it with Sozni.
Okay.
So that is again, though paper mache is unfortunately not very well known again because of lack of karigars who have the requisite skills. But this is again a very prominent form of Kashmiri embroidery.
Okay.
And then the fourth is the tilla. The
Okay.
tilla is, I feel, the queen of all the Kashmiri embroideries. So it was meant only for the kings when it started. It was kings and the truly rich. It was made using pure gold wires. Like you have zari also, right? That is also pure gold, but that is thread.
Yes.
Tilla is actually wire. It's
Okay.
real metal which has been, hammered down to a level where it becomes a malleable wire. And then the embroidery was done using that. So it is, naturally a thread and a wire, there'll be difference in weight. And the precious metal is always, the costing is done by weight. So it was always one of the most expensive embroideries which was done. Again, could be afforded only by the royals. With time, it has changed. I'll come to that when we discuss it then more. So these are the four embroideries, very distinct, very unique, and which are belonging exclusively to Kashmir.
Oh wow. So there you know what happened in 2014 for me. I never had any idea.
Yeah.
Later I met I met you and we started discussing curating my collection, and I realized that
Right.
what I have, this one probably is a Sosni. I don't have the other thing, so therefore let's start curating. What is the Ari? How does it look? How does one differentiate an Ari which is handmade versus an Ari which is machine made? And while you're talking about it, you probably can tell us if you are doing an Ari on a sari, and let's assume it's a like a complete sari. How long does it take? So if you could explain the process to us of Ari making, that'll be great.
Okay. So Ari is actually in Kashmiri called as Zalak Dozi. It is not called Ari in the local lingo. Zalak Dozi.
Zalak dozi, okay?
Yes. It is called as Zalak Dozi. Like Kashmiri does not have J. Kashmiri has Z.
Okay.
So it is Zalak Dozi. So Zalak Dozi is basically what we call chain stitch. Concentric rings of chain stitch are used in Zalak Dozi, and they are made using a needle which is called as R in Kashmir or Trongur. So from that R comes the word Ari. Now, if you see a normal chain stitch, so how do you do it? Is you take a fabric, you will put a needle inside it, take it out, loop the fabric over it, right? Pull the needle out, and similarly create those loops, which creates a chain stitch. But in Kashmiri Ari, or actually even the commercially the chain stitch, or as you call crewel embroidery is done, they use a small little needle, which is like a crochet hook. It's
Okay.
smaller, it's much finer. So what you have to do is you basically put the R inside the fabric, and the thread will be under the fabric. So this R has a hook which pulls up the thread, and in turn it creates that loop. So that is how the chain is actually created. Now what makes it different from other chain stitch embroideries is, in normally like there's something called as maggam in South India, you must be aware of it probably, right? So, or the crewel embroidery. So a lot of people think they're same, which they are not at all. Like in other embroideries, what you do is you're using the chain only to create an outline, and then it is filled with different form, any other stitch or maybe beads or stones, etc. But in Ari, it will always exclusively be concentric rings of chain stitch, nothing else. So Ari does not have any other stitch. It has only one single stitch, which is the chain, and only concentric circles are made in such a way that entire motif is filled with it. There is nothing else. That is the only way. But the way it is done so elegantly, like no other artist. Actually, like crewel embroidery is very common. But if you see someone who is from outside Kashmir who has made it, that look vis-a-vis what a Kashmiri artist has made, they are like completely different. There's absolutely no similarity, because naturally this is something they've learned from over centuries, from one generation to another. So the kind of grace and exclusivity what a Kashmiri artist gives, that does not come in any other form. So Ari, basically, like I said, it's concentric rings. Now it has number of different variations depending on the number of threads you're using, colors you're using. Like the first variation is called as a Poskar. Poskar Ari. Poskar.
Oh, Poskar Ari. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So Poskar Ari, basically it will have more than 3 colors, and in the motif all the flowers will be in full bloom. Because when you're showing full bloom, you're showing prosperity. So you use more colors. So the embroidery which will have more than 3 colors and all fully open blooms in concentric chains, that is called as Poskar. If you're using less than 3 colors and in the flower buds, the blooms will not be fully open, it will be in bud form. So that is called as Raskar Ari.
Okay.
Okay.
Poskar Ari
So
and
the
Poskar Ari.
Raskar, yes. So in this also now how much motif is used? Like if you're having only border, like usually if you see shawls, they'll have only borders, right?
Yes.
So that is called as pal.
Okay.
So pal can be Poskar or Raskar.
Okay. So Poskar
That is called as
full bloom,
yes.
and Raskar is when it's in the bud form.
Bud form, yes.
Only the borders, it's called the pal.
Yes, pal,
Okay.
which can be, like I said, Poskar or Raskar. That is
Got it.
okay. Then second is Jal. Jal is when you have a web design. It
Yes.
is kind of a bigger design, but it will not cover the entire fabric. It may be a sari, shawl, whatever. It is not going to cover the entire thing. But whatever design you have, that is fairly large and it is covering a bigger area, which is web. So this is an example of,
Yeah, I can see.
yeah. So this is other concentric chains of Poskar Jal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Poskar
So
Jal.
this also can be Raskar Jal.
Yes.
It can be both, right? Then there is Jama. Jama, I'm sure by now you know now Jama is the entire thing. When it is fully covered, the entire fabric is covered with embroidery, then it is Jama.
Yeah.
So sometimes what happens is, even though the Jama, you're using Jama, but maybe an entire shawl is there, you're using very thick, heavily set embroidery, which is covering a major part of the shawl or sari or whatever, but it is not covering 100%. In that case, it is called as Neem Jama.
Okay.
Okay. And then there are times when you're using golden thread also. It is not zari. Though, I mean, when you talk to a karigar, they'll say it's zari, but they are not trying to fool you or anything. It's just golden thread is referred to as zari, since the other golden thing is tilla. Since tilla is not used to make, you are not going to pierce the fabric with tilla. Tilla is done in a different manner. But you're using a golden thread, so even though they call it zari, it's not zari, it's just a golden thread. And that is always Poskar zari.
Okay.
That is generally zari is not, or the golden thread is not used with Raskar.
Okay.
Then these are the basic identifications depending on the number of colors and motifs. Then of course the motifs and designs are very much influenced by the art and science of nature around you. You know, it's been like this forever. Like if you see all the Ari motifs, they have been more or less similar for centuries. They haven't changed. Like all the other embroideries are doing innovations as in, they're trying new motifs. But Kashmiri Ari stays true to what it has been for so many years, because that is their identity and they don't want to dilute it by using some modern motifs. So the motifs have always been flowers, fruits, and birds. It's like even if you see this Uzbeki, see, you have a pomegranate, you have grapes, you have birds. So they have stuck to it, that's why Ari has most probably come from this Suzani because of this reason. Like this also, if you see, they're all flowers and vines. Like this is called as a dash. There are like all the pattern, all the motifs have names, local names, like paisley is to be made. Like if I go and tell my karigar ki please make a paisley, he'll look at me as if I've lost it, So it's called as badam. So you have then posh, you have again gulab, sarav, chinar. What you're wearing is a chinar, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So all these different motifs are there, which are very traditional Kashmiri names, and they are going to stick to them. In Ari, at least, they are definitely sticking to only these. Now, if you're using geometrical figures, like which are influenced by the Islamic architecture, so those are called as khatrash.
Okay.
Like I said, these have an Islamic influence, Persian Islamic. They do not make animal figures or human figures. But that changed when this concept of thing came, Jangal Tara. Jangal Tara is same as the Shikarga of Banaras. So
Yes.
shikarga is actually not a weave or an embroidery. It simply means the jungle scene.
Correct.
Shikarga is just a shikar scene. So you can embroider it, you can paint it, you can weave it, whatever. So that also came somewhere in 18th century in Kashmir. So even though the karigars do not make human figures, but when it comes to shikarga, they do the exception. And but it does not. They usually do not make it on wearable thing. They do not like to, because when you're wearing a sari or a dupatta, you're going to sit on that.
Yes.
So they will not make human figures on that. So it's usually the shikarga is limited to the carpets, the carpet, not the one on which you step, but the one which you will be putting on walls maybe.
Yes.
Or show pieces. So on that they will still embroider the shikarga, but getting them on sari and or shawls is a little different.
Threads, normal silk threads for Ari? Is that?
Yes. Resham, Resham, or they call it Resham, is the silk thread. Now the way of making it is also very interesting. They have a thimble made of leather, which is called as nyat.
Okay.
So yes, so it is a nyat which is worn on the index finger. It's made of leather, and you make a hole in the nyat, and the R is put through that. So the R is actually kind of already fitted in that nyat.
Okay.
And so you'll have that nyat here. I had an R at home. I can't find it. Otherwise, I would have loved to show you. So you put it on that nyat, and this is how they do it. And if it's a heavier fabric, then on the top of the nyat needle R, they're going to just wrap some wool or something, and then use the thumb to push it down. That is a traditional technique. And like all the other techniques of embroidery, they will always put the fabric on some sort of frame. It will be either a handheld frame or that adda, what you call, right? But Kashmiri embroidery does not use any frame. So once the tracing of the design is done, the Kashmiri karigars, they will sit with their back to the wall on a chalky or something, and they'll put their knees up. The fabric is loose on the knee, and then embroidery is done. So that, imagine something this delicate and fluid, which you're making without any tension on the fabric, and still it is not going haywire. So the kind of expertise these karigars have, that is amazing. So in fact, all the Kashmiri embroideries, these are passed from father to son, from one generation to another. There's no embroidery school or institute where you go and learn. The father teaches the son. So traditionally, only men have been doing the embroidery. So when the son is like 8 years or 10 years, the internship starts. And this child has to practice it for at least 16 years. After practice of at least 16 years, they are allowed to start embroidering on their own. So can you imagine the kind of expertise these people gain? So that is the reason, a Kashmiri embroidery which is done by an actual karigar, that will never be same as something which is done outside Kashmir, where someone has learned it from maybe an institute or embroidery school. Because this discipline, which comes from years, decades and decades of practice and seeing your forefathers doing it, that has a different flavor. It has a different, very distinct identity of its own. Now, more so than ever, like the current generation who's making it, they're all already in their 60s and all. So maybe one generation after them, they are still picking up. But what will happen after them, I'm not sure. Because even my own karigars, their kids, they don't even want to teach their children. They want them to do something better, go out and lead a better life. According to them, a better life, different life. So that is definitely a challenge. But on the flip side, the women of Kashmir have now taken up embroidery.
Nice.
Like earlier, they used to be helping only in making of the threads and so on. But they were actually not doing any embroidery. But now, because of economic reasons and other reasons, now women all of Kashmir have also taken up embroidery. It's a good step. And hopefully that will help to preserve the embroidery.
So is a machine version of Ari there, or is it only handmade?
Yes. Actually, what you get outside in the market, 99% of it is machine made.
Oh.
Hand embroidery in Ari is actually not really easily available today. It's mostly like you see the firans, you see the kurtas, you see coats and jackets. Everything is Ari embroidery, and all of them are machine made. It's very rare to find a handmade Ari in today's day. So this is called, first of all, an aksi. Like when the embroidery is done on one side of the fabric, it is called as aksi. Aks is reflection, right? So it's called as aksi. And there are also some forms where the embroidery is done on both the sides. Okay. So that is called as dorukha, same as what we had in Kani. So that we have dorukha embroidery also.
Okay.
So this is a machine embroidery.
Hmm.
Okay. And the way to identify is seeing the back of the embroidery.
Okay.
So if you see a hand embroidery,
Yes.
can you see the threads?
Yeah.
Right? You can see the threads which are
You mean the loose threads, right? At the end.
yes, the loose threads. Yes, because it's done by hand.
Yes.
You'll have loose ends and even the stitches,
Hmm.
right? You can see they're like uneven.
Uneven, correct.
Correct? Whereas if you see a machine,
It'll be perfect, I'm sure.
it will perfect. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
correct. Yeah.
Can
It's
you see? There are no threads and absolutely even. Like every stitch is even. But I don't want to demonize machine embroidery because
it makes it accessible to people, right?
yes, it's a very catch-22. It's a very catch-22 situation. You either let the art form die completely, waiting for a connoisseur who understands what hand embroidery is willing to pay for it, or you give in to the economic reasons and you and not give up on your art altogether and switch to what is coming. So it's a very difficult situation, finding a balance between the two. So there are some very beautiful machine embroidery works also. So that's fine. As long as you know, what I feel is as long as you know what you're buying, I'm okay with it. But the problem is when you are being fooled, like, you're being passed off a machine work saying that hand embroidery. And that is what creates a lot of confusion and the art actually gets a bad name.
So in terms of, so that was the Ari which kind of came to us from Uzbekistan, Suzni, like inspired by that. The next inspiration, if you like, was what you said when the Rafukars did the Amlikar, and today it's very difficult to find a real Amlikar in the market. And that kind of morphed into our Sozni as we know it.
Sozni, yes.
Right? So should we now talk about the Sozni and what is a Sozni? And when you tell us about the Sozni, do you is there a way to differentiate between the Ari and Sozni for a layperson?
Yeah, they're completely different. They're visually also different. They're completely different.
Okay.
So Sozni is again, it is called as Sozankari in Kashmiri again, and the artist who makes it is called as a Sozankar. So this is the one which is going to use the normal Danar stitch. Like what I'm wearing, I'll show you. This is a mix of
right. So the Danar.
Yeah, okay. So the origin was, of course, Amlikar, which I had explained in the last time, which was using just a Dana stitch.
Yes.
So this Dana stitch, which is called a satin stitch also today. So satin stitch, they kind of worked on it so that you could kind of replicate the weave on a fabric. And that's how the Sozni came. Like Ari has those chains. This will have, can you see how dense it is? You can't see the fabric under the embroidery at all.
Correct.
So this is a very, very thin thread is taken, a very thin needle is taken in this. So needle is, this is a regular needle. Like Ari has that hook. This is a regular needle which is connected to a ring. It's a thick ring, like a finger ring. So it is again put in your finger. And then the thread is through that and you do the embroidery. But the difference, like they're totally visually also different. Like there are no chains in this, nothing. These will be, but if you see the individual size of the stitch, it is hardly maybe a millimeter. Right? So this particular sari has been made by a master karigar. So this kind of stitches, this tiny stitch, the normal karigars who have just started work cannot do. Like this is a combination of Tilla and Sozni. So Tilla is again something only master karigars can do. So this sari has been done by a master karigar, and the way he has done the Sozni is exquisite. So Sozni is basically your satin stitch or a slanted Dana stitch or a herringbone. So only one or two forms of stitches are taken, and that is made in a very, very expert form. Like Sozni is not, in general, Kashmiri embroidery is not about very exquisite or very difficult stitches. The stitches are the simplest. Like Ari is using only a chain stitch. This is using a Dana stitch. So this is the simplest of stitches, but the execution is what sets it apart from everything else. So Sozni will not use complicated stitches. It will use one or two forms of satin stitch. That's about it. Like vata, it's called as vata chicken. So they use very very thin needle, very very thin thread, and the smallest of stitches. The aim is that the embroidery has to absolutely melt into the fabric. It will not, it's not ostentatious. It will not show like a zardozi or any other flashy embroidery. The aim is always to be as understated as possible, using a minimum of variety of stitch, 1 or 2 stitches. But that 1 or 2 stitch itself is used in such a manner that it is absolutely exclusive. Like since it came from Amlikar, it was meant to replicate weave. You should not be able to see any threads. So if you see the back of this, there are no threads, no threads hanging around. This is the back.
Yeah.
So that is what the basic ethos of Sozni is.
You said
Now in
vata
Sozni,
chicken, you said, right? What is a vata chicken?
Vata chicken is name of a stitch, the Dana stitch. In Kashmiri, like in Kashmiri lingo, they are still sticking to all their original names. Like you can't go and tell them chain stitch banana hai. They will not understand or refuse to understand and speak in that language. So they will still stick to all those old words. Unfortunately, that's why those words are still preserved. I feel like if you see the chicken embroidery, it has like chicken uses almost 40 stitches.
Yes.
But we are using 26 to 30 today. We've almost lost 10. But stitches like bakhia, ulta bakhia, those words are lost today. Because the karigars, they're in mainstream India. They are kind of connected to the normal people. So they have kind of moved on. Whereas Kashmir is still kind of in its own time. So that's a good thing actually, I feel. They're still kind of in touch with their what their roots were. So in Sozni, like I said, very few stitches are used. Similarly, even colors which are used are actually very few. They are not very flamboyant colors. They are very much inspired by the nature. So you will see like autumn colors, lot of browns, lot of greens. The color palette is also actually quite set. But there are times when they use multiple colors and it becomes like really special, and that has a special name. It is called as Rezgar.
Okay.
So if you are using raised cut, the stitches still remain the same, but if there's a flamboyance of colors, then it is called as the raised cut. Then they also use at times the golden thread, which I earlier said, which is an ari also, not zari, but a golden thread. So that is called as vachikan or talaibar.
Okay.
Talaibar. So these are the different forms of Sozni again. But what again very interesting is the process of making it. Again, there is not one single karigar who works. Usually in other forms of embroidery, you will find a single karigar does most of the work. But in a Kashmiri embroidery, there will be number of inputs coming from so many people. Like first step will be a nakash, of course. The nakash will decide the design, and it is made on a tracing paper. That tracing paper is then carved into a block. So every design will have a block. It's like same as those blocks which we use for block printing, almost similar to that. So those are hand carved and kept. So once the design is done, it will go again to the Taraguru. Like Taraguru was there in Kani also. So there is a Taraguru for the embroidery also. So what he is going to do is he is going to make a small sample. So the design is set. He will see the design, trace it on the fabric and make a small sample. And then what is interesting here is he has to get it approved from a master artist who's called as a Voste.
Voste.
This is a very I don't know how it has come. Maybe since Kashmiri embroideries have always been royal embroideries used by the royal courts, so probably that taking approval from a master karigar comes, but it's still followed. So the Voste has to approve, and if he doesn't like it, whatever changes he says, those are done, and then it goes to the Sozankar. Then Sozankar will use, like I said, these particular form of 2 or 3 stitches he will decide, and the better the karigar, the better is the finish of your Sozni. Like I'll show you. This is again done by a master karigar. So,
yes. Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Can you see? Look at this. This is the Sozni. This is Tilla. This is the Sozni part.
Looks
And
like
you can
literally.
Yeah. So you cannot see fabric anywhere.
No.
So all the motif is done, and the tiniest of stitches. So if you see, all the stitches are the same. There is no, absolutely no, trying to show something else what you are not. You know that you are simple, but you're good at what you do. This is a perfect example of that. It's a very simple stitch. Dana stitch is like literally a very simple satin stitch. But the more experienced you are, you know how to make it in such a way that none of the fabric shows
Yeah.
in the tinier. So there are, of course, you can make broader stitches also, and that is what leads to the difference in price. Like there will be some Sosnis where you'll find larger stitches are used. So those are not done by comparatively newer karigars. The more experienced the karigar is, the stitches become smaller, they become finer, and that's how the process is done. Now, in all these also, what they're still following is, since the original dyes are used to print using the blocks, you have to trace it. Now, how do you wash it off? So now, for everything you're doing dry cleaning, but in Kashmir they still don't do dry cleaning. They are going to wash that sari or shawl or whatever in local spring. They still follow it. The Kashmiri water, the springs are absolutely pristine. There's no pollution, nothing. So they're still going to wash it in those springs, and then it is cleaned, and then it is sent off for selling eventually.
Okay.
That is our Sosni.
Is Sosni also, is there a machine-made Sosni at all?
There are, but they're so poor, so bad that that is the irony of it. They're so bad, nobody would want to buy it.
Okay.
So Sosni I have seen a few pieces, but they are not appealing to anybody. So there's no market for, like, Ari is exclusively machine now, but Sosni still remains hand, simply because of the fact that the machine cannot replicate such small stitches. Such a simple stitch by machine is not possible, and whatever is possible, it looks really bad. So thankfully we are saved because of that.
So the pricing differences really in a Sosni, like you said, is the denser and more finer becomes more expensive, and when it is sparse kind of space.
Yes, correct. So it also depends on if it's jal or it is jama or neem jama. Like the previous, I told you, I did the same thing for Sosni also. The pricing depends on all that, and of course the experience of the karigar. The master karigar saris will definitely cost more than kind of newer. Even the newer karigar will have experience of 16 to 20 years, but the master karigars are like much more experienced.
True.
That decides the price. Yes.
So we've done the Ari, we've done the Sosni, and then you mentioned that the paper mash is probably the least understood among popular embroidery.